Ain't been no.
What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of NewOrleans.Basketball, NewOrleans.Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's popping with you today, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good, man. Coming back feeling real refreshed, man. You know, we had the trip to Orlando where I got to hang out with y'all and go to the Pels versus Magic game out there. And I'm just touching down, getting settled back in from a trip to Vegas, man. And what can I say, man? I love the city of Vegas. Not a big gambler though. I like the shows. I like the museums. I like the scenery. It's beautiful out there. But yeah, man, I enjoyed my time out there. I'm feeling real refreshed. Got to watch the Pelicans play at home in a different while I was in a different state, which is something that like doesn't happen a lot. I got to go to a couple of bars out there and watch the game, and not a lot of Pelicans jerseys out there, man. Of course, a lot of Lakers jerseys. But I did meet somebody from LSU out there, and they didn't have a great time having a conversation with me. But also my Cages lost as well, so it was a kind of a mixed sports weekend for me. But I'm feeling real refreshed, man. I'm feeling like I can come back and bring some energy now. Kind of like, you know, some hopefully some Pelicans, some injured Pels coming soon. So man, I'm all good. How's everything on your side?
I can't complain. Shout out to the Saints. Got it back-to-back wins. You know, put some energy into the air. In the
and
city.
Tulane
Like,
and Tulane.
and it's crazy that my mom went to Tulane, and I'm like, man, my SEC team is not as good as Tulane. It's wild, but here we are. Here we are. But just like you talk about, bringing back energy. The Pelicans are starting to bring a little energy back. Now the wins haven't been there, but the energy is starting to come back, and so I'm all good, man. So let's jump into this. Before we do, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG. That's _basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below, and make sure if you're not already subscribed to the channel. So you talk about bringing back energy, and you talk about players returning. Today, CJ was at practice. Jordan Hawkins was at practice. You get to see players that you're used to seeing in Pelicans uniforms at practice. CJ seems to be the closest. It's crazy. We should do a whole injury segment. In fact, injury report sponsored by sponsor. Y'all go ahead and hit us up. But CJ seems to be the one that's coming back. He was on the broadcast with AD and Joel at the last game, hinting toward him being close to return. Hawk is right behind him. Neither one were not in contact practice today. But what are your thoughts on at least getting some more shooting, some more offense potentially back in the next couple games or so?
I mean, at this point, anything helps, and obviously, guys like CJ and Jordan Hawkins can help the Pelicans out in a lot of ways. Let me tell you something. We my affinity for Marvel is widely understood and widely noted. And every time I watch Brandon Ingram play basketball, and then I watch this update about CJ's talking about he's coming back and Jordan Hawkins is coming back, and you got to think that Herb is not too far away, and obviously you don't hear any news about Jose and Zion and one of those. That's but you get some news. I gotta think Brandon Ingram heard seeing CJ and Jordan Hawkins show up is like on your left. It is Captain America fighting Thanos, and it's like the forces of Thanos are right in front of Captain America. He's battered and bruised, and he's like, all right, let's go, let's deal. And you hear that iconic on your left, and everybody, the portals open up. So listen, man, it has been a troublesome, worrisome, tumultuous, anything you could throw, unfortunate, not fun, whatever adjective you could throw in front of to the beginning of this season. But again, it's been who's available, and when you got to see CJ and Jordan Hawkins and see them shooting around at practice. And CJ talking about how he's ramping up, and Trey is obviously back. You gotta feel like that's gonna bring just a little pep in the step for Brandon Ingram, obviously, and obviously for Willie Green, because it's been tough on him as well. And I tweeted earlier this season when Zion and Brandon Ingram were the only two available players, and the rest of the team was out, that like the Pelicans and the New Orleans sports teams have a poetic like injustice towards them, where you pray all the time for Zion and Brandon Ingram to be available, and then they are available, and nobody else is there, and nobody else is. And then you get to this point with the Saints, and it's like, well, the season's lost. You probably should lose and see if you could get Shador, Travis, or somebody else. And then they fire the guy that everybody's been asking to fire, and they bring a new coach in and they win, and everybody's like, well, not now, don't win now. And then it's not lost on me that the one thing that's been hurting the Pelicans is chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. And you've been like, man, can his team get some chemistry? And soon as like the hand-me-not Pelicans start to get a little bit of offensive chemistry, here come Trey, here come Jordan Hawkins, here comes CJ McCollum. So just throw everything else out, and we're gonna plug them back in to get it started. It's just a poetic injustice for New Orleans sports teams, but I think this is one you take. So hopefully CJ and Jordan Hawkins are back soon, and we'll be excited to see them get on the floor and help out Brandon Ingram and the rest of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. The other name you heard was Dejounte Murray. Was starting to get light shooting up and things like that. Of all the players, obviously Zion excluded, because I think there's a while before you see Zion. Of all the players that I think kind of makes the biggest impact, if you could only get one back, I think it's Dejounte Murray, just because I think the biggest thing this team has been lacking, outside of someone who can set other people up, is the perimeter defense and the ability to stop someone. And even though, you would want that from Herb, Dejounte gives you both, right? Like, he gives you both a better on-ball defender, but also someone who can create offense a little bit easier for everyone else on top of himself. And so, again, it's good to see him kind of get back in motion. You haven't seen him since game one. I think the next couple of weeks will be really telling to see how the Pelicans can kind of come to hell. So there's been a couple games since the last time we talked to you guys. Not all of them great in terms of outcome. But the overall sentiment of the games made you feel as if, okay, maybe the Pelicans are going so. That's crazy to say for a team that went 1-2 throughout the week. But you could see from game to game, not only were the scores closer, but the Pelicans were able to go further in the game. Like a week ago, you were saying, hey, they were right there until halftime, and they were right there and got closed out. Well, each time this week versus the Thunder and versus the Nuggets and versus the Lakers, you could see the Pelicans in it for longer and longer now. In one of the games, you got closed out by what I would say the greatest player of all time. And that's going to happen when your second best player is Jalen Noel and their second best player is LeBron James or Anthony Davis. That's going to happen. But all in all, from this week, what did you see in terms of the OKC game where you're there, you're in it halfway, and then OKC kind of puts the foot on the gas, to the Nuggets game where you played all throughout and you were able to close the game with a win?
Yeah, I think what just from the overall standpoint of the game, I think you kind of saw the storybook of the Pelicans season end in that OKC game, right? Meaning like, they compete hard and then they get closed out in the fourth quarter by a team and they pull away, right? And it's kind of something that kind of Pelicans fans and what it seems like some of the Pelicans players not have basically accepted, but like you understand what you're watching, right? Like we've been talking about it over and over in this game where on this podcast where we talk about how they compete, they fight, and then you go and it's time to sub in your best players because the bench has gotten you from that third quarter to the fourth quarter, and you turn around and the Cavs are subbing in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and Willie looks to his left, and yeah, Brandon Ingram can come in, but I mean everybody else is the guys who've been playing, right? Like there is no go get your starters back in the game. And so they get closed out by the team. They get closed out by Shea. They get closed out by Jalen Williams. Like they get closed out by the team. And then like the Nuggets in the Lakers game were more like the Pelicans waking up and saying, we're not going to accept those kind of endings. And so on one game, you saw them, obviously the Nuggets without their best player, but you saw them. We've seen the Pelicans lose to teams without their best players, without this guy there, this guy. So like any win at this point, any game you want to take serious, whether Jokic is playing or not, and Aaron Gordon is playing or not. So, you saw this team go in and stay there and stay in the game and stay competitive. And then you go into this Lakers game and they win that Nuggets game. You go into this Lakers game and it could have very well the same way the Pels played well the entire game, pretty much led the entire game. But then like the closers came in, LeBron and AD, did their thing and they ended the game. The way that closers do. And I think the key point has been the I guess like the through line through this little 3-game stretch has been the through line of the entire season, which is Brandon Ingram being absolutely out of his mind, playing some of the best basketball we've seen since like the Phoenix series, when he was just absolutely on one. He's been competing on both sides of the ball. He's been a phenomenal shot maker, and he's everything that they've asked him to do, he's doing. He's incorporating the 3-ball at a level we haven't seen from him, especially doing it while having all of the attention on you, especially in games where like even Trey is not there because of back-to-back things. And so, I think, the results are what they are, and, the record keeps slipping in those things. But you have got to be impressed with the way, that Brandon Boston has come around, what Eves has shown you. You're getting things out of this, and it's not, it's not reflected in the wins. And like Trevon is saying in the comments, the season is still young. You have some time to do some things, but you are seeing good things come from players who you were wondering who was going to replace the production of Najee Marshall, who was going to play center for the Pelicans, like things like that. You're finding answers to, through these trying times, and with guys on the way back. I think this can only make the team better, especially if they could get some of these guys back soon while the season is still young, and you can try to make something of the season. While I think obviously the Pelicans didn't want to start this way, we've seen the Pelicans with their backs up against the wall, like in the regular season, play some really good basketball. Talk about that stretch where Brandon Ingram played out of his mind so that the Pelicans could make the play-in tournament. You talk about the year before, last year, where Zion was walking down the NBA so that the when he came back. And so like you've seen the Pelicans play well with their backs up against the wall underneath the Willie Green tenure. And so, if the 8-ball is against you now and guys are coming back, like you have no excuses to, as guys come back to sit, to not be playing. If you want to make something of this season, it's going to take when guys get back to be in the game and to play at a maximum level in order to make some kind of dent into this hole that you've dug yourself in.
Right. The things I kind of take away are very similar to what you said, in that like, yeah, you're not playing with the guys that are going to be in your rotation, but from what you asked Brandon Ingram to become, all signs are showing that. Like, yeah, the turnovers have been high the last few games, but at the same time, look at the situation in which he's given, right? You have to be the best offensive player. You have to be the best facilitator. We need you to hound people on defense, all by being guarded by 3 or 4 players, all by being played with players who not only were not on NBA rosters, but weren't a part of this team, and you don't know their tendencies and what they do well, and you don't know it together as a team. So there's so many things he's being asked to do, but yet you feel as if the team is getting better. So to your point, maybe the silver lining in having so many players out is that you get to see Brandon Ingram develop and grow into what you want. You said, hey, Aaron Gordon wasn't available, Jokic wasn't available. There was a player on the court with a max contract who got it this summer who was not better than Brandon Ingram in that scenario. And so, again, it's a little bit different. Yeah, he won a championship as a number 2 option, but at the same time, his number 1 option was available, and look what it looks like when he was.
Yeah, and I've that's something that I've been thinking about. It's a great point you make about, that guy who was across from him, because they have a lot of similarities in a sense where I think as far as their contract goes, because I think when you watch what Brandon Ingram is growing into and what he's developing into, when you think about a guy who is stepping out on the 3-point line, a guy who is getting better defensively, getting better as a leader, showing you professionalism, at a very high level. And, people were talking about the Jamal Murray contract, and yeah, it's probably going to look a lot worse, as time goes on because of, some of the things that are going on with Jamal Murray. You don't really have that problem with Brandon Ingram. I mean, obviously the playoff series with the Thunder with Lou Dort, the Lou Dort situation, he was coming off of injury and things like that. Obviously, there were built-in excuses for that, but you've never really been like, well, Brandon Ingram is not good anymore. You've never had that. And so when you think about what the Nuggets did with Jamal Murray's contract, and then also what the Pelicans are looking for in Brandon Ingram and what Brandon Ingram is looking for, you got to think about, what's the value of Brandon Ingram to this team, the same way that the Nuggets thought about what's the value of Jamal Murray to a Jokic-led team. And see if that value is different than something that you might have thought about before the season started. Because without Brandon Ingram, this team would not be a team. They would be, we'd already be talking about next year for sure. But Brandon Ingram gives you a fight in every game. And so it's just very interesting to hear, to see what Jamal Murray is getting and how he's producing and what that contract looks like, versus somebody who has never, ever really had the shown you what Jamal Murray has shown you last year and going into this year. Brandon Ingram has not really had that problem other than that one playoff series against the Thunder. And so it's just interesting. It's just interesting.
Right. So when you look at that slate of games, what were their main takeaways? Were there any common themes that you kind of saw either from the OKC struggles or the good play that you saw versus Denver, or even the 98% good play that you saw versus LA? What were the main themes that kind of jumped out to you?
Well, I think the first thing is that I want to give a huge shout out to Yves Missi. I think the Pelicans have found their starting center moving forward, and I think the Pelicans now know that. Because at first it was, is Daniel Tice starting because, because Yves is not ready. And then it was, is Yves starting because Daniel Tice is a little banged up. Well, I mean, now it has gotten to a point where, Yves is feels like a Herb Jones-esque kind of find, meaning like you found a cornerstone of your team, in a spot where you maybe didn't think that you would find a cornerstone of your team. And so, he has again continuously applied what he has learned. It just, when Willie said that he was a fast learner, again, it's coach's jargon. It's like, the cookie cutter answer to a young guy who maybe is not ready to play, but you don't want to break his concept. So you say, he's a good learner. You don't really pick out the one thing he's incredibly great at. Right. But man, he hit the nail right on the head, because this guy, he learns so quick. And he's an athletic freak, but he has a basketball mind. And I think that's something that's very important in a young guy who is learning the game on the fly and is already producing at a way, for this team that is really good. And so I think, you saw some of his switches. You saw him going toe to toe where they obviously AD is who he is. But I mean, you saw him fighting, competing in that. And you don't expect him to shut down AD. I mean, AD is playing out of his freaking mind right now. But just the way he was being aggressive, but not overly aggressive to the point where he's fouling and things. That is what's so impressive to me. It was that. And I think another thing that is showing itself in a good way and a bad way. I think Trey Murphy has a lot of you remember when Lonzo was playing and it was his jump shot, his shot is the thing that he needs to fix. he needs to work on, he needs to do. And
that
offseason, he went to the offseason and he worked on the shot. And then he came out the next season and he just would not go to the rim. He was like, no, I worked on the shot. Look at the shot. And I think Trey got a lot of that in him when they were like, look, you need to put the ball on the ground. And Trey was like, oh, bet. Now, bet, say less. And listen, I want to see it. I want that to be something that, you know, you want to see that, because that is the next evolution of Trey. Trey is a phenomenal shooter. We all know his ability to shoot. What else can you do to develop your game? But it's also like, shoot the ball, bro. Like shoot the three. Like that is what you are going to need to do. And when it's available to you, do it. I understand that, like, the putting the ball on the ground is what's gonna get you paid to that next contract. You got that little dip of money right there. Like, oh, what else can I get? I love it, right? And I want to see him continue to do that. But I think as guys come back, especially when you're gonna have this, you know, it's all these different variations of the Pelicans, right? You got, it's the CJ and BI, but Zion not there. But Zion and BI and CJ and nobody else there. You got a CJ and Zion. So I don't know if we've ever really seen like a BI, CJ, Trey, Jordan Hawkins, like led Pelicans team, which I'm going to be very interested to see how that goes, you know, and see how that goes. But I think in that particular kind of quartet of leadership, of lead guys, Trey is going to have to be able to shoot the ball, because CJ is going to have the ball in his hands to do the pick and roll, to do most of the ball handling that Zion and Dejounte, who are not available, are going to be doing, secondary ball handling outside of BI. And, you know, in some cases, you know, we saw Brandon Boston kind of being a pseudo point guard and Brandon Ingram being the ball handler. Right. CJ is going to be a welcome sign for Willie, and he is going to put the ball in CJ's hands. We already saw the turnovers and things. Obviously, CJ is not great at turnovers, you know, but I think Willie trusts him. And so it's going to be interesting to see what Trey's role is going to be, because you've seen good and bad versions of Trey as he comes back in this past week. And obviously he didn't play in that last game because of back-to-backs, but I think, you know, you want to see him get back to what made Trey Murphy. And I think with this, if you get these guys back, this kind of quartet of guys, he's going to have to be the one to be the Jordan Hawkins is going to be the confident shooter, but Trey is going to have to be that guy as well, with CJ doing a lot of the ball handling and things. So I just want to see Trey get back to what makes Trey Trey. You saw some of it in the Nuggets game, but you also saw some of the bad things in the Nuggets game as well in the OKC game. So I just want to see him. I just want to see him get back. I just want to see him get back to what makes him great.
I mean, as far as like the last couple games, I think you're doubling down on who this team has been. The reason the last couple of games have been close is because the Pelicans have been playing better defense. Now, it's with totally different players, and it's with players who, Jalen Noel, Brandon, they were not known as defensive players before they were brought to this team. They were known as bucket getters. And it's just so happened that better perimeter defense has made the Pelicans competitive the last couple games, which is what the Pelicans have saying that they have been since Willie Green first walked in the door. And so, again, I understand, you know, knocking Willie down, but the fact that he's made some principles, and when they actually follow through with the principles, they are in every game. There has to be something that is coincided there. I'm sorry.
It's funny that you say that, because that's kind of what everybody's upset at Willie about, right? Like, there's no system. Little did we know that there is a system. It's just on the defensive side. They don't have no offensive system. The offensive system is in a work in progress. He does have a system. It's just you have to play defense. That's the system. And when you start getting back to that, you know, like you said, the games are a little bit more competitive.
Right. And so, you know, not only that, the Pelicans are still a bad passing team. Like when Dejounte Murray was traded to the Pelicans, he immediately became the best passer. But then when you take out him and Jose and Zion, immediately, like, entry passes are not great. Lob passes are not great. Bounce passes are not great.
Time out. the Brandon Boston had like one game where he had 11 assists, and Willie was like, "I've seen enough. That's the starting point guard." The very next game, he threw a lob to Jamal K. Rapp. I was like, he threw a lob to Brandon Ingram, and God bless Brandon Ingram for going get it. But he threw another one to Jamel Kane, and I was like, "Whoa, this is where we at, huh? This is the point guard. This is where we at."
They're not gonna pocket passes. Like it's just again, that's just not good in their skill set. So whoever the Fred Vincent of passing is, that's who needs to be the next addition to the Pelicans roster. On top of that, like to your point about Eves, like I've been there. Like it didn't take me long, and we talked about it all season. The best case scenario was that Eves came in and in training camp and showed, oh, I need to play. And it was a matter of, after you saw him like game one, like it was a matter of time before he became the starting center for this team. I'll get into that in just a second. But as far as Trey goes, even Willie Green said it after the game. There was a couple of those shots that Trey passed up that I wish he would have took. For Trey, while he's trying to show some of the things that he's added and trying to evolve, not just because, hey, I went to the offseason, they told me this is what I need to work on, this is what I'm working on, but also look at who's available on the court. You need someone who can create offense for himself and for other people. And so the growth that he's showing me off the dribble, both for the ability to score, but also to play make, is very encouraging, both when you have a full roster and when you don't. But at the same time, the thing that makes you Trey Murphy, to your point, is shooting the ball. And so when everyone is available, the thing that's going to make Trey Murphy the best is shooting the ball. So while he's getting his extra shots up right now, to your point on previous pods, he should be shooting like 10, 11 threes a game, whether it's off the dribble or it's off the catch. Either way you go.
Victor Wembanyama had a game where he had 12 threes. Trey should be able to get he should be able to get that.
Right, exactly. So let's jump into what I wanted to talk about. So all off season long, the narrative around the Pelicans was trade Brandon Ingram for a center. And then the narrative was the Pelicans have no centers at all, no players who play the center position at all. And so far through a 4-10 record and, just murderer's row of injuries, center has not been the problem. Like, that's not been the biggest issue on the team. Like, so much to the fact that Yves Missi is second on the team as minutes so far this season, just because he's been available the most amount of time. And in terms of upside and bright side, like, that's a position you're looking forward to in terms of watching the Pelicans on the night to night when you watch Yves Missi grow and what can he do from an exciting standpoint, but also from a development standpoint. And so my question to you is, like, are they okay? Like, obviously there's some moves to be made. They're so close to the tax line. Something's going to happen one way or the other. So something's going to happen from a personnel standpoint. But where are you at on the center position outside of Yves just being potentially your starting center? Do you feel as if the Pelicans should be aggressive finding maybe a backup? Or are there other options maybe in the G League that just got called up today that could be getting a shot?
That is where I am at. It's funny, again, poetic injustice. The whole season, off season, was the Pelicans don't have a center. And the center position has probably been the healthiest and most available on the team. And outside of Brandon Ingram, probably the most productive. So it's poetic injustice. I think, again, to your point, the Pelicans are in a position where that they aren't staying put because they're so close to the tax that they're either going to get under, or if you're this close to the tax and your plan is to go into the tax, you're going to trade and get better improve the roster. So you're in a position where something is going to happen one way or another. I think if you're watching the Pelicans, and obviously Yves, I think with his talent, his abilities, and his ceiling and what he could become, he's obviously the most important center on the team. Whether you think he's the full-time starter or you think he could benefit from having somebody he is the most important. If you're watching Daniel Tice has shown some really good veteran things. He reminds me a lot of Larry Nance in a sense where like where he is right now in his career, he probably shouldn't be used in the role that the Pelicans are kind of using him in. Like Daniel Tice was probably knocking on the door to either the twilight of his career or retirement.
He was going to retire.
Right. And so he should be a third big. He cannot be worse than Carlo Makovich. He just cannot. We just saw Carlo add another great game in the G League. At this point in the time, right? And obviously they called him up today. At this point in time, with the roster that you have, with the guys who are available, why not put him out? He won't be the reason you lose a game. He won't, because you have all these other people out. You have all these other injuries. Carlo's minutes won't be the reason you lose a game. And so why not give him an opportunity to play? And so I think that if Eves continues to show this growth, and as the Pelicans continue to get guys back, and he's gels with, maybe he has some kind of game with CJ McCollum that we don't know about, right? Or obviously you saw what Dejounte and he did in game one, how they connected a bunch of times, or maybe he and Trey have some kind of, screening role action that they can get into, screening for the shooter on the side. As he gets more comfortable with guys and screening to get Jordan Hawkins open, as he gets comfortable with guys coming back, if that's your starter, you're really looking for supplemental guys to help you behind Eves and to play in case Eves is gets injured, knock on wood. You see it with, again, going back to the Mavericks with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, where everybody that, Gafford keeps starting and everybody's like, well, he's right. Derek Lively's there. You have that with Eves. Eves is now in the starting lineup over the Pelicans, Daniel Gafford and Daniel Tice. And so who can you bring in the back? And I want to see what Carlo can do. He's shown the 3-point chops in the preseason and in the G League. You just need to see what's going on and what he has, especially when you give him a contract. So I think the Pelicans are in a situation right now where they have an opportunity, if they can get something out of Carlo, where they can ride out this season with this kind of center rotation. And maybe you've got your center rotation in Eves and Carlo. And then you find a third big in the season, similar to Daniel Tice, maybe not who's knocking on the door of retirement, but you go find another center who can do that in the offseason, and you make your tax either evasion move, something else to bolster this team, or if it's the other way around, if you're going, trading off, that center position is not something that you're looking to overpay for or or send out assets that you could probably do something else with it. Because imagine if you go and trade Brandon Ingram for, let's say, Jared Allen or Nick Claxton, where would this team be right now with Nick Claxton and exactly. So Jared Allen. So I just, you don't want to overpay a premium player in a premium position with a premium skill set for a fit where if you have a 70% version of the fit in Eves Misi, who is developing and growing, and you can find that backup big in Carlo Makovich and just kind of roll with that. You're already playing small ball, and you don't even have Zion out there, and he was part of the plan to play small ball. And so, you can find some things there. Jeremiah Robinson Earl has done some really good things in in a smaller role. You would expect him to be even better. So, I just think that you don't need to be going and looking for the savior at the center position. I think you're just fine there with Eves. And if you can get anything out of Carlo that's better than what you've been getting out of Daniel Tice, which is not that big of a hurdle or that high of a bar to climb, I think you're fine at the center position.
Well, I'll do you one better. Daniel Tice hasn't been playing, if you haven't noticed. Trey Jemison jumped him too. So, I'm at the point with Eves where I'm not trading anything to put in front of Eves from what I've seen so far. He literally possesses all the traits that you want the center next to all of the players that are normally in your rotation to play next to. And he's even showed you some things facing the basket that I'm like, why would I hamper his development and growth if the low bar that he has is going to be giving me 10 and 10 and 2 blocks and a dunk every night, then I'm going to play that, because if I look around the league, that's what a lot of starting centers are doing. So I'm not going to trade an investment in order to cut down his minutes. Like, even Willie Green's kind of said, like, this experience that he's getting right now, similar to Brandon Ingram, even though Brandon Ingram's not playing with his normal guys in rotation, the experience that he's getting right now and shooting his three anyway, even when he's quadruple teamed, like, that's going to pay dividends when the other guys get back. Same thing with Yves Missi. All the experiences that he's getting right now are going to pay dividends when everyone comes back. So why would I put something in front of to block that? As far as Carlo goes, you and I have been talking about it for weeks. Like, every time you see the guy, especially in G League, it's like, oh, okay, Carlo's blocking shots. It's like, oh, okay, Carlo's getting dunks. Oh, okay, Carlo's got a double-double. Oh, okay, Carlo's shooting threes. But then, like, for some reason, the Pelicans have gone through their entire roster to get minutes. He's been the one guy that you don't see. So when you talk about starting to get guys back and what do you need to fit around that, to your point, like, what do you need to go trade for a potential upgrade at center for if a lot of the minutes are going to be finished with small ball five with Trey or Zion anyways? What value is there? But then on top of that, shouldn't you be looking for a center or a big who can space the floor? Because if Yves doesn't do that, you need another guy who could. Well, every time you see Carlo, like, he's been shooting 2-3 threes a game in the G League and shooting at like a 60% clip. It's like, well, why don't you throw him out there to see if spacing the floor with this band of characters can help, right? And so I don't know why he hasn't been given minutes. Trey Jemison, who I like to call like a poor man's Tristan Thompson, like, he just gives you straight energy, hustle, Debo, like, around the rim, like, that is needed too.
He looks like an action figure. He looks like an action figure come to life.
Or like Jax, and so like you look at those things, I'm like, well, I just like to see what Carlo could give you, because to your point, I think Jeremiah Robinson Earl has played some really good minutes so far for the team this year. But like, if he was the 4 instead of the 5, and then the Pelicans weren't fighting for rebounds when there's 7-footers on the court, I think that would help. I do think that would help the team. So with this week up, and it doesn't get any easier, tomorrow the Mavs in Dallas, back-to-back versus the Cavs, who haven't lost. And then you're in-season tournament game. Actually, the Dallas game is in-season tournament game too. The in-season tournament game at home versus Golden State. My question to you, can the Pels get one of the next 3?
Ooh, boy. Ooh.
And what are you looking at in these matchups?
So listen. The Mavs went to the the NBA Finals out of the West. They have Luka and Kyrie. Luka didn't play last night against the Thunder. Kyrie went absolutely bananas like he always does, and they beat the Thunder. However, they have not been the greatest team. They have not been world beaters. I think the Mavs game is probably your best bet this because I think they just come off playing 2 really, 1-1 game, lost a emotional game against the Lakers, but played really well. You got this news that like CJ is ramping up to play and Hawk is back in the building. And so you see guys, like you see them coming back. You hear news about Dejounte, Dejounte weren't ramping up and things like that. So you're at a pretty good spot. Brandon Ingram is playing out of his mind right now, and so you're at a good of a headspace as you could be in with the current state of affairs. And so I do think that tomorrow is probably your best bet. I mean, it's going to be great to watch Najee pick up Brandon Ingram full court. It's going to be incredible to watch. But I think that's the best bet because, first of all, Golden State is the number 1 seed in the West. Who would have saw that coming? Back whenever. Who would have saw a Steph and Draymond
in the league?
And I was just about to say the Cavs have to lose eventually. They're not gonna go, 82-0. But I just don't know if it's gonna be against the, like, they play well, but again, against the Cavs last time in New Orleans, But again, you really turned to his right, brought in Brandon Ingram, and Kenny Atkinson turned to his right and brought in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley in the fourth quarter, and they pulled away.
And
I
Zion
think that
played in that game.
yeah,
And had 30.
Zion played in that game
Yeah.
and came back from injury. He sure did. You don't have Zion. He's not going to be playing in that game. And so it's going to be very difficult. So I think this Mavs games tomorrow is the one where you look to see if the Pelicans can come out with aggression. And obviously Kyrie is going to do Kyrie things. But if Luka's going to do Luka things. But if the Pelicans play like they played against the Lakers, defense, hounding defense, and if Brandon Ingram can be the best, or at least toe for toe with whoever's the best Mav that night, if he can come out and be toe to toe with them, which I think he can, he has obviously all the ability to do so. I think the Pelicans have a shot against the Mavs. They've been terrible in close games. Luka hasn't been as great as he usually has. Kyrie has been playing out of his mind, but they still don't have the team depth that other teams do, and so they've been struggling a little bit. And so I think the Pelicans have a good shot tomorrow. But after that, man, that Cavs Warriors back to back is just that's tough. That's tough. What you think?
I'll say this: if the last week or so is any indication of the Pelicans, as long as they defend and really defend, they are the scrappier team, they are the hungrier team, they're the team that doesn't want to go down 10 in the loss column, and they play defense like that, I think they get a shot in all three. Because if I look at the past games, they've been in them all. Even OKC, they've been in them all. It's just at certain point in times they take away. Now, if you stay if you play with pace and you don't slow down the offense when things get tight, and you continue to play tough defense, I think that they'll be close. They may not win any of the three, but I think that they'll give themselves a shot. And again, that's establishing an identity. What you need to do with these players or the players that you have before, have non-negotiables and be the things that determine your success. And defense so far has been those things. So
and I think what we talked about on the last pod, I think you need to go into these games that you are playing with without guys until guys get back, and look at them in 3-game series. And if you really want to keep this season alive, you need to win one of those 3 games. One of those needs to be a win, and you need to treat it as, okay, this is a 3-game series. You have to win one. Yeah, I think that's the way to kind of look at this until it gets back, in order to keep yourself kind of relevant. I saw, Kyle telling us in the chat that the Pelicans are 4 games out of 6 seed with players coming back, right? So again, just stay within striking distance. 4-5 games of the play-in tournament, until these guys get back. And I think in this 3-game series, you think about 2 NBA Cup games, you got to win one of them. And I think tomorrow is the one you might want to try to go all out against, especially, if the Mavs decide, Luka needs to sit or whatever the case is. You need to try to go out and get that one. And I think they have a chance to do that. And like you said, if they defend, I think they can be in all of those games. And then Brandon Ingram, we've seen him be the best player in the 4 quarters of games. He has the ability to do that. Trey is obviously back, and so maybe he can catch fire in one of those 4 quarters and help you win a game. But I think this Mavs game for sure is the one that they have the best shot against out of these 3.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with that being said, that's all we got for you. It's a tough stretch of 3. Hopefully there's some reinforcements on the way. Hopefully, knock on wood, next week you get a couple. What you got left for the people, Garrick, as the Pelicans try to squeeze and steal a win this week?
Yeah, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, this is going to be a tough week, for them being on the court. But, off the court, these guys, you're seeing guys come back, and it has to be revitalizing the spirit to see, some of your guys who were in training camp and were on NBA rosters a couple of weeks ago come back. And so, we'll be here to cover it all. Back from my vacation, so I'll see y'all on the timeline. As always, follow myself, Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NewOrleans.Basketball, no E. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel, NewOrleans.Basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.